Welcome to the Rotary Club of Hudson. My name is Tom Tobin, president of the club, and we're thrilled to have you join us today. This meeting broadcast is available on HCTV as well as our Rotary of Hudson YouTube channel. Our club meets weekly at Laurel Lake for breakfast on Wednesday mornings from 7:15 to 8:30. Come out and join us for a meeting. We would love to have you as a guest. To learn more about Rotary, our club, and the impact we're having on our local community and the world, visit our website, rotaryhudson.org. Enjoy the meeting today and help us share the message that Rotary connects the world.
Rotary Club of Hudson. It's good to see everyone again, and welcome also to those who have joined us as guests this morning. Our invocation this morning is by Jim Young.
Morning, Rotarians. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
You're good.
Okay, good. Let us pray. When there is turmoil swirling around us, let us be the calm. When the world is dark and full of fear, let us bring the light of dawn. When voices shout and conflict reigns, let us be there for relief. When hope is needed everywhere, let us raise a voice for peace. In these uncertain days, let us be more tolerant. We ask your blessing on this Rotary Club and for us to your service. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Jim. And now to lead us in the pledge and the four-way test, Catherine Signs.
Please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the four-way test of the things we think, say, and do. Number one, is this the truth? Number two, is it fair to all concerned? Number three, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And number four, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you, Catherine. And a beautiful sunset or sunrise, whatever. And now our president, Catherine, or no, that was years ago, Marilyn Orr.
And Catherine is vigorously denying the job. So good morning, Rotarians. Today's business spotlight is on our local Lexus dealership. Peter Spacagna is the general manager of Metro Lexus and Lexus of Akron Canton. He will share with us now how this segment of our local economy is weathering the pandemic and what changes you can expect in your local Lexus experience of buying and service. Next week, the business spotlight is a local restaurant, and details are being finalized right now, but you're gonna like it. Peter, tell us what's going on over there.
I'll just ask Peter, do you want me to put up your PowerPoint?
Yeah, that'd be fine. Thank you. Thanks, James. Okay, well, thank you, Marilyn, for the invitation to your Wednesday morning meeting. Appreciate it. I enjoy sponsoring and going to the gala that Ron always bends my arm for every year. Hopefully there'll be one soon for you, and I'll be happy to attend and sponsor that. But thanks for having me. As Marilyn said, my name is Pete Spacagna. I'm the general manager. We have 2 Lexus dealerships in Ohio. Hopefully I can give you a little snippets of inside information of things you may or may not know about us and what's going on at the dealership, especially since COVID hit. But we're 2 dealerships. There's 3 total in the Cleveland market. Lexus has 244 dealerships in the country. That's not really a lot when you compare it to its competitors. For example, BMW, Mercedes, others, there's 500 to 600 dealers. So Lexus sells as many cars as they do, but they do it with quality over quantity. We're owned, if you go back on the previous slide, we're owned out of Houston. We're privately owned, our 2 dealerships, by a group that has a consortium of many different businesses. The automotive part is a very small part when you think about the dealership platform. We fall under the umbrella of Ascent Automotive, which is under the Friedkin Group company right there in Houston, Texas on Enclave Parkway. The Friedkin company owns many different companies. If you want to noodle around and go to Friedkin Group on Google, you'll see the first link will pop up. This will be the homepage. But some fun facts, the movie The Mule with Clint Eastwood, our company produced that. Imperative Entertainment is one of our branches of our company. If you've ever heard of Auberge Resorts, for example, they're in Napa Valley, they're on the East Coast, they're all over the world actually. Our company owns Auberge Resorts, but our claim to fame was being the Gulf States distributor back in the late 60s for all Toyota dealers. What that means is in Texas and the 5 surrounding states, we are responsible for distributing all the Toyotas and Lexuses to all the dealerships from Lexus and from Toyota as they come over. So, but the company is very big in philanthropy too, as you will find if you go on the website. So that's the company. If you want to move to the next slide, I'll try to keep it brief. I've been accused of talking too long at times, so I'll try to move efficiently through. So why Lexus? What's so special about Lexus? Well, for me, it starts with their quality, their history. When they came over in 1989, people didn't really take them seriously. The other competitors thought they were just going to be a glorified Toyota. And right off the rip, the first vehicle, the LS, became the #1 selling luxury vehicle in the first year. How did they do that? Well, the crazy thing was the dealers that signed up with Lexus back in 1989 were not even allowed to see the first car. Lexus said, if you want to join us, you can't even see the car. You're going to have full faith and confidence that what we're building is going to be special. And the accolades go on and on. What I love is that they are #1. The first top left there says highest among luxury brands in new car loyalty, meaning more people repeat buy Lexus than any other product, which is great. As we segue into August here, we're on the second leg of a new car sales event, which has some really great incentives. Lexus has really stepped up their game, especially in this climate that we're in. Go ahead and move on to the next slide. So Lexus's slogan used to be the pursuit of perfection. We remember the commercials. Now it's experience amazing. One thing I put up there was guest experience will never exceed employee satisfaction. So for us and myself at the dealership, what matters to us the most is that we create a great experience for our guests when they walk in there. It's very important that if you build a great product, you have to back it up with a great experience and relationships. Well, how do we do that? How do I do that? I have to make sure that I am supporting our team members. We have about 150 employees that we support. And between the 2 dealerships, last year alone, we did over $100 million in sales. So we're not a small outfit. We have a heavy tax base in our local municipalities that we invest in. And, our team members, and think about how many family members are responsible or are being supported by those team members. It's a great responsibility, but the bottom left, I put the 2 P's, people and processes. That's always been my mantra for success. Put the team on the V. If you ever read the book by Nanny Meyer, a restaurateur, the guy who created Shake Shack, he's setting the table. If you've ever heard of that book, he talks about leading the team and the ways he in the competitive world of the restaurant business in Manhattan and New York is unbelievably successful. So he created the Open Table app. So the guy's been very successful, but his restaurants have done very well. We have partnered with him in many ways with respect to his leadership keys. So, but Lexus does something really well. Go ahead to the next slide. Every year, there's something that you guys will never know about usually because it doesn't really get published too much. But they survey all the dealerships, all the brands, and they say, well, what do you think of your manufacturer? And this is the dirty little secret in our business. A lot of times the manufacturer talks one thing and then does another, you know, kind of like, you know, some of our politicians at times, not to get political, but, you know, Lexus every year is #1 in dealer satisfaction. What does that mean for someone like me? It means they support me. They have a great relationship with me. They care about our team members. They care about our success. And that disseminates through our dealership to our guests, to our employees, and it makes a big difference. So to be #1 in this market and have the highest ratings, and it's no coincidence that Toyota, the parent company, is #2 in this survey. It just says that we think very, very highly of Lexus and the relationship and how much they really care about our success. So keep going to the next slide. Metro Lexus, if you go to that dealership over on the west side on Brook Park Road, over next to Mally's, you can see it from 480, just completed a 1.5-year construction project. So if you're on the west side and you want to peek in there, you should see it. The place is you know, really special after a nearly $8 million investment in the last 1.5 years. A feature wall, a new car wash that's open 7 days a week, completely new service and sales departments, but it looks great. We even put the high-speed doors in, so when people come into service, they don't have to wait long for the old door to slowly move up. But the place looks great. Akron, to be consistent, will go under the renovations a year from January. We were going to go under it this January, but because of COVID, we had to kick the can, if you will, another year to meet the requirements for Lexus. Go on to the next slide. And we're in the Golden Opportunity event, which is one of 3 sales events we do every year for new car incentives. Lexus is really up their game with things like 0%, 90-day deferred payments, up to $5,500 off in rebates and incentives. And they're even doing something unique this month. They're doing an ultra high credit FICO credit score discount. So if your credit score is above 760, which at a lot of our clients, it's well over 800. They're giving an additional incentive on top of the normal incentives, which I've never seen that in the time I've been with Lexus. I think that's pretty unique. So the incentives and support are there. All the programs are running through the end of August. We had, you know, when March hit and COVID hit, our sales dropped like a rock. You know, people were still trying to gather information. There was a lot of fear. You know, and there still is in many respects, but it was so new that it really shut the faucet off for our business per se. The plants that produce our vehicles were shut down for about 8 weeks because a lot of the other companies and businesses they depend on in manufacturing plants, they were shut down. So, you know, the supply chain got compromised. Well, when you fast forward to June, all of a sudden our business spiked up significantly in July. For the first time in my career, we actually ran out of product for many of our models because it was a perfect storm of high demand and not enough inventory to support that demand. Now, as we run into August, by the end of this month, we should be in a much more stable position with inventory. But it was a unique dynamic for us at that time because we never ran out of inventory. Keep going. If you go to the next slide. What's changed in our industry, as Marilyn referenced? Well, the buying process a little bit. People are wanting to shop more online for obvious reasons, right? There's some trepidation about coming into public places for many of our guests. Many of them have underlying health issues or are elderly, and you know they don't feel safe. So we've gone from you know, the traditional model of selling the car where you come in and you drive the car to where you can actually transact and do everything on our website, buy the car, do the credit app, everything. And we can even deliver the car to that guest. YouTube is one of the big video. Obviously, everybody knows what YouTube is, but they've really grown a lot when it comes to the automotive sector. But we're pretty excited that in a very short window, we were able to completely allow a guest to buy a car from A to Z online, and we can even bring the car to them. So that's what's changed for us. Our selling process is now broken up into many different facets, depending on what that guest wants and needs are. Keep going. So production, this gives you a snippet into the sales I referenced. back in May and June. If you look at dealer stock, it was kind of low, and then sales spiked up. So now as we run into the second half of the year, there'll be plenty of product for our guests to buy vehicles and have a nice selection of, which is great for us because we really have to have product in order to take care of our guests. We were selling out of our pipeline, which is incoming units, for weeks, and now we're starting to see some of the lift there. Go on to the next slide there. So what's new for Lexus? So as we run into the latter part of this year, we have a brand new LC convertible that we will get next month in September, the end of September. That's going to be a Halo car. That vehicle came out in 2018, and it's really a special car. It's nearly 500 horsepower, fully aspirated engine. I could never drive it frequently because I don't think I'd have a driver's license if I did. It's a little too fast for my lead foot, but that car will be here next month. We're very excited about it. They finally redesigned the IS, which is a four-door sports sedan vehicle for us, and that comes out in October. And then we're going to finally get the ES in an all-wheel drive. The dealer body has been asking for it, so that vehicle will be here late September. For the first time, we'll have the ES in an all-wheel drive. And then as you run out into next year, we're going to see more updates with the RC LX, which is our Halo SUV. The RX, again, is getting an update, the NX and the UX. Go on to the next slide. Yeah, there you go. So community means a lot to us. You know, we invest a lot of our resources and also a lot of our time. You know, as Ron always gets me to go to the gala in the last couple of years, we've been able to sponsor that with a nice, I think, Ron, that was the May 17th one last year, where we gave away the Indians tickets and the Ritz-Carlton and dinner for two at the Marble Room. And we give you a Lexus to drive for the weekend. It did pretty well at the gala last year. This Thursday, tomorrow, in the bottom right, I'm going to the Akron-Canton Regional Food Bank, and we're going to make a monetary donation there. Last week, our sales manager, Mike Ladera, went to the Parma Heights Food Pantry, and Channel 5 happened to be there doing a spot, so we got some free PR at the same time that aired last week. But things like Velasana, which is the Cleveland Clinic's bike event every year, 100% of the proceeds go to cancer research. The Community Classic, which is a local school in Canton that we support every year. Littlest Heroes, children with cancer that we send on a trip, we've supported them. So there's a lot that we do. The Greater Cleveland Golf Classic for the American Cancer Society, that's a big one. That's coming up. That one was usually in August, but it got delayed to September. We sponsor that at Canterbury Golf Club over there in Beechwood. So there's a lot that we do because to me, running a business is great and all, but if you're not giving back to your community, giving back to things that matter to you and your team, then, you know, to me, it would kind of be void. For us to not, you know, invest in Akron Children's, I almost forgot. That's been a huge investment we've done with them for the Akron store. Their radiothon every spring that we've done the last 2 years now. And it, as you may or may not know, nobody gets refused for health care at Akron Children's Hospital, regardless of their situation. So, but that's a little snippet of some of the things we invest in terms of community and give back to, which is very, very important to us. You can go to the last slide and then I'll wrap up. This is the Lexus covenant. They're the only manufacturer that has a covenant out of all manufacturers. And I love it because it basically speaks to what Lexus is going to do. And this came out in 1989 when they first launched the LS. But at the end, you can read it if you want, but it basically says, if you think you can't, you won't. If you think you can, you will. We can and we will. You know, I'm very proud to work at Metro Lexus and Lexus of Akron Canton. We have great team members, many of which have been there upwards of 30 years. And we have wonderful clients that come in there. I love the people I deal with, and I love what we do in our local neighborhoods. But thank you, Marilyn, for the time. Ron, thanks for asking me to support the gala a couple years ago, and appreciate it, folks. Any questions, I'm happy to answer. If not, I'll conclude.
I'd like to make one comment. I think it was 4 or 5 years ago when my wife and I went down to Lexus to look at a certified used car. And it's the only time I've been in a car dealership where the general manager came out to the front desk, met us, talked to us, and of course we learned he was from Hudson, and we also go to the same church. But of course he put himself in danger by doing that, because being friendly with me is you get hit up for the gala. And so thank you very much, Peter. It was a wonderful gift last year.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. Appreciate the kind words. But yeah, you're a gentleman, and I'm blessed to get to know you over the last few years. So, but thank you.
Thank you, Peter. That was very, very informative. I feel like I got a mini economics lesson as well. This morning, we're quickly going to move on to our featured speaker. Unfortunately, Evan McCauley, who was scheduled to introduce her, is currently on vacation with poor internet connections. How dare he? And so John Adams will introduce our speaker today. John.
If you will hold for 1 minute, I literally had her bio up and I lost it here. So this is that strange pregnant pause that, geez, oh Pete. If you have it up already, why don't you go ahead and do it? Otherwise, I'm going to try and pull it up here.
Okay, this is going to be quite brief because we really want to hear from Suzanne. Suzanne, can you please unmute yourself? Suzanne Buck is the head of schools and the first female to hold this position with the Western Reserve Academy. Go, Suzanne! She comes from a long history of education within the private school environment, and is, I believe this is your third or fourth school?
This is the second school that I've been the head of school at, and probably my fourth or fifth school. Yeah.
Wonderful. But this is her first opportunity to actually interact with the Rotary Club of Hudson. And we know how important the Western Reserve Academy is to the economy and the intellectual life of our community. And so it is wonderful to welcome you, Suzanne.
Well, thank you, Marilyn. I am so honored and privileged to be here today. So thank you, Rotarians, for inviting me and for being willing to deal with my morning bags under my eyes and as I'm waking up. But it is a privilege to be here with you today. WRA actually has a really interesting connection to Rotary International, in that one of our alums and one of my favorite board members is the executive director of Rotary International, John Hugo. And so in the past year that I've been at Western Reserve Academy, I've really enjoyed getting to know John and better understanding his work with Rotary, and I'm thrilled to be with you today. I'm also really pleased to be on the same docket as Peter. And Peter, it was a pleasure hearing from you this morning, and I was taking some copious notes right from your first slide. And one of the things that struck me on your first slide was your overall parent company, the Friedkin Group, inspiring joy and purpose through life's adventures. And I thought, wow, hearing that a car dealership and an educational institution would be on the same docket, what are the similarities? And hearing about that inspiring joy and purpose through life's adventures, and that's what we do in school. So I'm so grateful for having seen that. And as you're presenting, Peter, I was just noting the numerous ways in which our industries are similar in terms of providing experience to our constituents and the emphasis on giving back to community. So I really appreciated your presentation. If it's okay with all of you, what I would like to do this morning is talk a little bit about leading a school during a time of crisis, and talking about some of the pivotal lenses that I've had to use as a school leader in a time of pandemic. And I don't know about you all, but in the Zoom conversations that I'm having on a daily basis, everyone is using this word pivot. And so I thought I would look at pivoting from a different perspective or different lens and kind of deconstruct the pivots that we've had to make as an institution during this time of COVID-19. So if it's okay, what I'd like to do is share my screen and walk through some of the pivotal lenses in which we've made some changes here at Reserve. So I'm going to post this up. I'm going to present and I'm going to try to go out. Hold on one second. Go into share screen, and here we go. Can everyone see my slides?
Yes.
You can see them. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So learning how to pivot and new leadership and decision-making models. So I mentioned that I wanted to talk about different pivotal lenses. And so today what I'm going to talk about are 4 different ways in which I've seen my leadership pivot and our institution pivot. And these lenses I define as being through a generative way in terms of how do we change the ways in which we're generating new ideas. The second is strategic. What are those longer term strategies or tactics that we need to put in place to emerge successfully from a time of disruption? The third is pragmatic, very much on a day-to-day basis. What do we need to be doing? How do we need to be changing our operations? And then finally, and perhaps my favorite lens, is the opportunistic lens. So kind of going on the Winston Churchill, never let a good crisis go to waste. How do we take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of us and use them to our advantage? On this slide, you'll see some pictures, which I'll share a little more information about as we go deeper into my presentation. But in the top right-hand corner, you will see numerous pieces of face masks or face shields and personal protective equipment. And these were all manufactured in our Innovation Center here at Western Reserve Academy. And in the initial days of COVID, we were one of the leading producers of PPE and providing equipment to the Cleveland Clinic, to university hospitals, to Summit County public health officials, as well as emergency first responders in the town of Hudson, so that we could provide gear that we were making here with our employees. So a little bit of information about Western Reserve Academy. We are 390 students and we're co-ed. We're grades 9 through 12. We're about 2/3 boarding, 1/3 day. And interesting to note, about 70% of our boarders come from the state of Ohio. So we have a number of Ohioans in our community, and yet we also have a really strong international population. So students from 31 different countries. So we are very diverse in terms of the representation of students from different backgrounds, from different cultures, and we're thrilled and privileged to be able to host them on one campus. We're nearly 200 years old, and we were founded on the same campus as what is now Case Western University, which migrated into Cleveland. And we think we're smarter because we stayed here in Hudson. Yay! And we have many signature programs here, including innovation in our Wong Innovation Lab, as well as a phenomenal program in cancer immunology. So let's talk about the first pivot that I had to make, which was in March. And at that time, things were really disruptive. And I was confronted with really tough decisions in terms of what do we do? This pandemic is coming. How do we take care of our students? We've got students from all over the world. And so at that time, we made the really tough decision that it would be best with spring break coming up if all of our students went home and we went to a distance learning model. And that was difficult. There were many challenges for us in terms of helping our international population get home. We were working with different consulates and embassies and state departments to try to get students back to their countries, and a number of our students had to quarantine in between places before they could even get home. And so it was a tough time for us as a community when you're sending a 15-year-old on a plane to quarantine in a place for 2 weeks outside of their own home. There are a lot of safety concerns, and we were able to get through that. And we were blessed that all of our students were able to find either home or a temporary place with the generous individuals who were willing to take our students in. And that was definitely a difficult time. But when we're confronted with difficult decision making, it's also important that we are generating new ideas. And one of the things, going back to the inspiring joy that I love, is that we need to be thinking in ways that are stimulating, that spark new ideas, and that we're not getting complacent and lulled into a sense of paralysis of a woe is me, or, oh, we've got to shrink back and not move forward. Inaction is not a possibility. And so in March, we started here creating projects that we called idea factories, where I would bring my administrative team in to really generate ideas. And we would kind of think outside of the box, and did so physically. I would make my team go on walks. And this was a time where we could still engage with each other, but we were outside, and I would pair people up in different combinations and not allow people back into a room where we socially distanced, but not allow them back into the room until people had come up with 5 crazy ideas that we could be thinking about ways in which we could be making our school experience better for students who are online, and what we could be doing to enhance Western Reserve Academy or our relationship with the community. And the great things about generative ideas is you don't want to stagnate the creative process. So anything is okay. You can let the ideas flow. And it was from that we were able to create other really important ideas that eventually we were able to execute. So to guide our generative thinking, I was asking questions such as, what can we do to enrich our student experience? What opportunities can we create to foster connectivity, relationships, community, and engagement? And what current tools do we have that we could leverage? And how do we get ahead at this time? How do we get ahead of the curve and think about how we celebrate our seniors who are not going to have a traditional graduation? So these are all part of our generative questions. We were talking also about new markets and new products. What services could we offer during a COVID crisis time? And is there a new market? Are there things that we could be doing to provide to others? And what could we be doing that distinguishes WRA after a crisis time? And then our school mascot is the pioneer. We define ourselves as pioneers. And then how do we capitalize on this identity? So these are all part of the generative ideas. And out of this came some wonderful projects that really serviced our local community as well as our families. So the first was Reserve Your Meal. And a number of you may have been aware that during, from March until the end of May, Western Reserve Academy offered free meals on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays to anyone who wanted to sign up. And we offered curbside drop-off and delivery, as well as pickup. But our chefs in the kitchen prepared meals for a family of 4, and you could reserve a meal, go online, and it was a way for us to give back to the community. So no cost, but it was a way that we could provide food and service to our neighbors here in Hudson, and that was really well received. And that was one of the ideas that came out of this generative time. Another was marketing the idea of a postgraduate year or a repeat year to kids whose school years had been halted by COVID, and could we say like, hey, we can give you the gift of time, and it's okay, there's no stigma for repeating a year next year should you want to come here and have more time. And then we really created some interesting, creative, and fun things which brought joy to our community. So in this picture here, you might see that I am sitting in front of 400 cardboard cutouts. And at that time, we, in our Wong Innovation Center, we did a cardboard cutout of every student in our school. We posted in the chapel. We did our typical morning meeting from the chapel, but allowed our community to know that we miss them. And one of the advantages of this, we got picked up by national media. This got picked up by the Associated Press, and then John Krasinski, the actor who has a show called Some Good News, picked it up, put it on his show, and it appeared in the Washington Post. So this was a wonderful way in which we were able to use a generative pivot and think differently during a difficult time. The next pivot was really in April, and it was strategic, thinking about what do we need to do, what tactics do we need to implement, what do we need to do to get ahead. And at this time, we were really thinking about COVID and what we needed to do here, but also focused on thinking ahead to right now, to the start of school. And so at that time, we hired a consultant just to facilitate conversation, because I knew as a leader, I could not be a participant and a facilitator at the same time. And so how do we think about strategy as we move forward? At this time, we were really looking at how do we move to a post-lockdown, pre-vaccination world, which is where we're in now. And so we were asking questions about the optimal on-campus experience. Just as Peter's asking that about his customers and his employees, we're asking that here. What's the optimal experience? And how do we plan for disruption and uncertainties? And we were looking at health parameters, a teaching and learning plan, the calendar, the schedule, and community engagement. And we were also asking questions about how do we serve an international population that may not be able to return back to campus. And then if we couldn't get everyone back to campus, how do we create an optimal distance learning plan? So these were all part of our strategic pivot. And the results of this were great. By thinking strategically, we at Western Reserve Academy were actually able to provide a whole different array of options for our consumers. So there was school for those who could come to school in person, and who will be showing up here on August 14th. We created an option for those students who might need to stay at home for a while until they feel like it's safe or until travel restrictions have been lifted. And so we created a reserve your bed, come when you can model. We also created a school within a school. So we created a whole online opportunity for students who wish to be remote learners for the full year. And that allowed us to put any faculty member who doesn't feel comfortable being in a classroom to be in an online only experience. And so that way we were taking care of our employees as well. And those people who could self-identify and say, hey, I'm not comfortable. I feel like I'm at risk if I'm in a classroom environment, even though we're all going to be 6 feet away. And even though we have big classrooms here and small numbers of students in the classroom, I would feel more comfortable online. It allowed us to create a school within a school that syncs in real time with what's happening on campus, and yet is sensitive to the needs of our international students who are learning 12 hours in a time zone 12 hours differently than us. And so the strategic results were great, and that was something we took that we're really proud of and has helped us in our preparations for today. The pragmatic pivot, dealing with those day-to-day operational issues that we needed. And one of these was, how do we graduate our students? And we were able to kind of combine the pragmatic pivot with a generative one. And in this photograph here, you'll see that we created graduation gift boxes that we hand delivered to every student that we could. So anyone in the state of Ohio, in Pennsylvania, and we were able to hit all of New England. All but 30 of our graduates, we were able to deliver graduation boxes and their diplomas in person. And so here you see one of our educators showing up at graduation with our Pioneer mascot at a student's house. During the Pragmatic Pivot, we were able to write protocols for boarding schools in the state of Ohio for what a healthy and safe reopening looks like, and we were able to work with the state government. And then finally, talking about the opportunistic pivot, there were many different ways in which we thought strategically and opportunistically about how can we take advantage of this crisis right now, and what things are there that we can be jumping on and thinking about different opportunities. Right here to our right is a student who has now enrolled at Western Reserve Academy, but we found her because she wrote an op-ed in the New York Times, and it said, online learning is better than in person. And she wrote one of the most impressive op-ed pieces I've read, that was written by an 8th grader. And I read this op-ed piece in the New York Times and I said, I want this girl. And I challenged our team to find this student. So our enrollment and communications teams were able to find her, and she was getting a lot of press from this op-ed piece that she wrote. And we were able to introduce her to Western Reserve Academy and saying, hey, what you love about online, coming from a public school in New York City, what we can do in person is 50 times more exciting and exhilarating for the type of learner you are. And she learned more about Western Reserve Academy, and we are thrilled that Veronique Mintz will be joining us this year. So that's an opportunity when you see something that's impressive. How do you look at ways for synergy with your current environment? Another piece of opportunistic thinking had to do with food, because as we approach the school year, we can't have the same number of people eating out of our dining room. So we have to redistribute where we will be serving food for healthy and safe dissemination of food for our students. And so as I was thinking about how do we make it so that it won't be a disappointing experience for our students, or it won't be one more thing that's difficult in the time of COVID, we decided we're going to buy a food truck. So we are serving students. The food truck will be an option that students will have the opportunity to rotate through and get food. And in a post-COVID world, our students are working with our food service purveyor to operate the food truck, and they will have an elective course called Food Truck. So they'll learn about business operations. So just a few examples of opportunistic. So I have talked a lot here, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, if I can do that. And just wanted to give you a different context for thinking about pivots, the 4 lenses in terms of a generative pivot, a strategic pivot, a pragmatic pivot, and my favorite, the opportunistic, and hopefully give you a little bit of information about Western Reserve Academy. But I thank you for allowing me to join you today. It's been a privilege, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
If anyone wants to ask a question, just go ahead and unmute yourself. I'll start off. So actually, I'm on the school board in Hudson, although my middle daughter did graduate reserve. I was just wondering, have you been coordinating with the Hudson School District as you go through these various?
I have, and actually I feel incredibly fortunate to have a great relationship with Phil Herman. And so Phil was one of in March, I called him and said, Phil, this is what we're thinking about doing because of our boarding population and not knowing what's happening. And so Phil and I have been able to talk extensively about plans, and also to be a source of support for one another. You know, at times like this, I think we all need, in leadership, we need thought partners, we need allies. I'm a positive person, so I don't want to say misery loves company, but but there is an element to that as well.
Question, if I may. There's a whole lot of creativity in your presentation, and I congratulate you for leading your entire team through that. One thing you did not talk about is the financial strain that I imagine you and almost any kind of private institution is going through in terms of international students. Are they going to come back? Are they going to pay that much money? Or parents saying, why am I paying for an online experience and paying for room and board and all of that? So could you address how you're trying to cope with the financial?
Yeah, thank you, George. Yeah, it's not easy, and it is a time of uncertainty, and we're also discovering that it's different by country. So, for example, our Korean students aren't restricted from coming into the country right now in the same ways that our Chinese students are. And up until 2 weeks ago, European students weren't going to be permitted to come into the country without quarantining in a country in between coming here. So it's been something that's been changing on a rapid, just almost in a moment's notice. And there is economic impact. We have lost revenue in terms of the number of international students who've elected to learn online, who will not be in-person learners. So there's revenue reduction in that. We are a tuition-driven school. In terms of our operating expenses are huge to offer to have the campus that we have, to have the model of small classes and lots of individual attention. That is not cost effective to run. And so there has been a hit. We've also, though, seen, interestingly, in the past few weeks, a surge of people throughout the country who are actually wanting children to go back to school and feeling comfortable with the protocols that we have in place as a boarding school, feeling that it might be more safe than some of the local options within their states. And so that's been interesting to see, because that was not something that we would have anticipated. Our enrollment is very much in flux. But similar to Peter talking about inventory, one of the things that we have done is decrease the number of students per room. So we don't have triples. We have taken one whole dorm offline this year. So it can be a COVID quarantine center, an isolation center. So we can separate the health services of those students with routine health issues and those that may be either exposed or have concerns related to COVID. So that has also affected our revenue model by taking a dorm off and decreasing the number of beds available. But with this new capacity of beds, we're pretty much optimized, which is good. So George, I don't know if I answered your question, but I think what you've alluded to is, yes, there are economic considerations, but we're doing okay right now.
I have a question.
Thank you and good luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Suzanne, I have a question for you. This is a little bit down the road for us in our life journey. We don't have grandkids yet, but the hope is that our children will follow us in Hudson, and we'd assist them in doing that. And let's say that I have grandkids living in Hudson. My question is, what's the ideal student for Western Reserve Academy? And we're so blessed with an amazing public school system. What's an ideal student for Hudson City Schools? And if I was going to pay for Western Reserve, give me some idea of, this would be a great fit for your school. Right. This would be a great fit for Hudson City Schools.
Right. Well, I think I'm probably more equipped to talk about WRA than Hudson. So I would let Phil Herman talk about that, because he could really speak to the assets of Hudson. But you're right. Hudson is a phenomenal school district. Unbelievable services offered. And of course, I feel really strongly. I drink the Kool-Aid about Western Reserve Academy.
Sure.
I think in terms of Western Reserve Academy, what we can do that's different, that may appeal to a family or student is, one, it's a smaller school. So it's going to be a more intimate environment in which you will be known, needed, cared for, and where you will have the opportunity to engage within a community. And so as a day student at Western Reserve Academy, you are part of the community, and we have a global community here. So the diversity that you can find at Western Reserve Academy is pretty amazing. And so I think for a student who wants to have an expansive worldview and live or exist within community with others who are coming from different backgrounds, I think that's a real asset of the school. I think working with faculty members who live on campus, who are devoted to a holistic education and thinking about education 24 hours a day in terms of being accessible in the evening for extra help, being on campus if there is something that a student is passionate about, helping him, her, or them to explore that passion. I think that's something that a kid can get here. And I think because of the size, sometimes we are able to help kids discover their passions in ways that in a bigger school you might not be able to, because of those individual relationships that you are able to form with faculty members, and because there are more eyes on you. So I will say that for an introverted kid who wants to slip through the cracks, this is not a great environment. Because so much is expected of you to engage in terms of community and to participate in different ways, and the requirements to participate in the arts and athletics and to be engaged in community service. And so, you know, if you want to do your own thing and not be engaged in a community, this wouldn't be the right fit. We also need learners who are inquisitive and who are capable of rigor, but who are also going to find joy in that learning experience.
What was the comment about the random draw of partner names? What was that?
So one of the things that I like to do as a leader is mix it up, because I find that sometimes we get in kind of ruts or similar thinking when we work with the same partners all the time. And so with my leadership team, I believe in changing things up. So I would make them draw different names of different people to go out and talk to and work with in a different way. I also think it's really important sometimes to change the physical location of where you're meeting, because it gets you in a different mindset. So there are times where I want my leadership team, we are in a war room. We are in one specific classroom. We're using whiteboards, we're using technology, and that's when we're really dealing with some pragmatics and strategy and tactics of what we're doing. But when I want people to be generative, I try to change up the routine so that we're thinking differently.
I have a question. Suzanne, thank you for that presentation. I was planning on getting off because I'm supposed to be at the office soon, but I was so engaged by it. I thought it was wonderful. You know, I find it fascinating how in such a short period of time, in basically a pressure cooker, you've been able to pivot, if you will, and adapt in this climate. You know, the line I like to use is change has never been this fast and it'll never be this slow again. Yeah. But how has your athletics been compromised as a result of COVID? Because certain sports like football, for example, there's a lot of teams that are not participating or what have you. Both my children went to Seton last year, which I know you guys pull a lot of students. I was surprised, but how has that evolved over the last few weeks or what have you?
Yeah, and Peter, I would say it's continuing to evolve. So it's really difficult because there's so many different contradictory messages about athletics right now. And there's kind of, I would say there's a suspension in between organizations. So you have the Ohio High School Athletic Association saying, you know, push, you know, August 1, yeah, continue to go, but you can't fully engage in contact sports, but you can practice, but we don't know when interscholastic competition is going to be. You have other Northeast Ohio saying different things. The governor's office hasn't said anything. So where we are right now, we are in a place that we're allowing practices and allowing for basically physically responsible protocol. So not engaging in scrimmages, working on skills, working on strategy, conditioning, training, having students distance. And right now we just have our day population on campus. Our boarders are scheduled to come starting for registration over a 3-day period, August 14th, and then we'll go into what we consider our preseason. But we're gearing up for preseason right now using those physically distanced protocols for safety, and we're still kind of waiting to see what the different organizations say about competitive play, but particularly for contact sports, it seems very highly unlikely that we'll be able to participate in interscholastic competition, but nothing has been set in stone yet.
Yeah, my son's playing golf in high school. Well, that's one sport that has worked out okay.
Yes, yeah, good choice, Peter. Good choice.
Thank you. Your positivity is infectious. I say fight the good fight. You're doing a great job, and we'll get through this, as we all will. So
yeah,
I think we have time for one more question.
I've got a question that I was a science major, and one of the great things about it in high school and college were the labs. And so how do you replace the lab experience in physics, biology, chemistry when they're online?
So Jim, that's a great question. And one of the things that we did in terms of reorganizing our schedule this year, and this is betting heavily on science and a vaccination, is that most of our science classes are going to be taught the second half of the year. So we have our classes in modules. So what is considered a year-long class will be taught in 2 40-day modules. And so many of those have been scheduled for the first part of our year, and then our really intense laboratory classes. So we have a robust program in cancer immunology where our students are actually growing cancer cells and working on development of their own vaccinations. They work intensely with lab rats. They are isolating genes in our science labs, and that work will be happening once we hit the new year. So we learned that with being online this past year, it was difficult for laboratory sciences, and there are only so many ways you can be creative. Nothing really replaces that in-person lab experience. So we're hedging our bets here that our students will be able to get back into the labs the second part of this year, and if we can all pray for and imagine a vaccination world.
Thank you, Suzanne. This has been absolutely wonderful. And I don't know how anyone prepares for something of this nature so early in their tenure. Western Reserve Academy is so fortunate to have you as their leader during this time. Your enthusiasm is infectious, and I think we need to invite prospective students to view this meeting because their attendance would be this would seal the deal, as I say. The other thing is, I never thought I would say this, but I want to find the Wayback Machine so that I can go back to high school and come to Western Reserve for the experience.
Well, thank you.
So thank you again for attending, and I hope that we'll see you again.
Well,
perhaps after this is over and we'll find out how things have settled out.
Well, and I would love the opportunity, if there are ways that Western Reserve Academy can partner with Rotary, or if I can share some of my educators to do presentations for you all, or if we can do joint community service projects, please know I'm open to exploring that. So I thank you all for the opportunity to be here today and for the good work that you're doing in Rotary. So thank you.
You're welcome. And we also want to thank you for the opportunity of allowing us to continue our work on your campus with our Interact Club. It's been very, very well received, and we're very proud of that. So, closing up, next week we will have a club board meeting immediately following our regular Zoom meeting. Board members are asked to schedule a time to attend. The agenda for the meeting will be published this weekend, and this is an open meeting for any club member who desires to attend and learn more about the functioning and planning that goes on in the structure of our club. So I want to make sure that all people know that they are welcome to attend. Finally, in closing out, this day in history. In 1957, American Bandstand, hosted by Dick Clark, made its network debut on ABC. It had previously been a local show running on Philadelphia's TV station, WFIL-TV, since October 7th of 1952. Now, the show ran until 1989 and was a pretty important part of my teenage viewing habits. In 1983, AT&T were broken into 7 regional companies, the Baby Bells, following the antitrust suit, which was initiated in 1974. So it takes a while to get this done. And in 1930, Neil Armstrong, our own Ohio guy, was born in Wapakoneta, Ohio, and went on to become the first person to set foot on the moon on June 20th, 1969. Now, on August 6th, tomorrow, in 1945, the initial use of the atomic weapon in war happened over the city of Hiroshima. The Enola Gay, piloted by Paul Tibbets, delivered the little boy that exploded with about 13 kilotons of force. And on Sunday, August 9th, in 1945, the plane known as Boxcar, piloted by Charles Sweeney, delivered the second bomb, called Fat Man, to attack Nagasaki. This is the 70th anniversary of this initial use of atomic weapons. The official death toll of 225,000 people who died is now considered overly conservative. And I hope we never, ever see atomic weapons used again. Good. Have a great rest of your morning. On that sober note, let's move forward and open doors for opportunity. And again, thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, Peter. Goodbye.